Hello! Today we're going to look at 3 different methods of casting on in knitting. All 3 are pretty basic methods that you'll come across. So the first method is the cable cast on, or the 2 needle cast on, which is quite neat. Just a series of little loops at the bottom, and it looks the same on the front and the back of your work. Not the stretchiest of cast on, but equally it doesn't pull your stitches in. The second method we'll look at is the backward loop method, which is not the tidiest. I prefer using on an edge where you won't see it. Just get these little bumps at the bottom of your knit stitches, but it is super duper stretchy, and it's pretty neat on the back. You can't really see it on the back. And then the final method is the thumb method, which it's not stretchy. It's neat. If you knit your first row, you get little bumps at the bottom. And on the back it's neat, but not my preferred method. I find it too tight. So the first one is our cable cast on. So for this one, it's just a series of little loops that we're going to make on our needle. The first stitch and the last stitch is never the same as the rest, but the middle ones are super duper neat. So for this one, we're just going to start with a slip knot, as if to make a knot, but don't pull the end through. And your basic slip knot. Put that on your needle. You don't need a long end for this cast on, just enough to be able to weave in afterwards. So we've got our number 1 stitch. To do our number 2 stitch, we are going to insert our needle as if we were to knit into that first stitch, yarn around through to the front, but pop it on the left needle. Then your third stitch is going to be done differently. You're going to go in between the 2 stitches. Your first one was a slip knot, the second one you went into the stitch, and now you're going to go in between stitches. So again, the yarn round, pull through to the front, and just pop it on your left needle. And every single stitch from now on is going to be done going in between the 2 stitches. So the last stitch you made and the second to last stitch you made, you're going to go in between those, pull through to the front, pop on your needle. And then, as I say, your first and your last stitches aren't quite the same. They're worked differently to the rest. But to start knitting, it's quite simple. I find this possibly the easiest cast on method to start knitting into. The stitches sit on your needles quite neatly. And just knit across your first row. And again, you've got that loop with your first stitch. And your last stitch kind of is a bit short, but it works. The next method is going to be the backward loop method. The backward loop method I find best for if you're going to be picking up your stitches afterwards, or if you need something really stretchy. But once you pull that down, you can see it is a neat cast on. And again, we're going to start the same way with a slip knot, Again, you don't need a long end with this one. Just pop your slip knot on your needle. Now hold your needle in your right hand and yarn in your left. You're going to put the yarn around your thumb and slip that loop onto your needle. The yarn goes front of your thumb, round the back, and then you just slip that loop onto your needle. It's not a neat way of casting on, and I do find that if I take a break during casting on, I've completely lost tension. It's also not the easiest stitch to go into. You may want to go into the front of the stitch or into the back of the stitch, it's up to you. You do get a different look depending upon where you go into. So that was front of the stitch. Now to go into the back of the stitch, you just end up kind of losing that loop you've made, so it goes a bit baggy. Let's go into the front and into the front again. We'll do into the back. You can kind of see they're sitting neat-ish, and then your last stitch is essentially your slip knot. Go into the front as normal. Now if you have a look, you should be able to see there's just a slight difference in that second stitch there, the two that we did into the front and the second to last stitch that we did into the back. And the final method for casting on we're going to look at today is the thumb method, which I find to be super tight. It has little bumps at the bottom of your knit, so just be careful with your tension with this one. You need a long end to start off with, and we start again with our slip knot, and we're just going to pop that onto our needle. Now, just like with the backward loop, we're making a loop, popping it on our needle. Instead of letting go, with our tail end that's not attached to the ball, we're going to put that around our needle and then pop our loop over. Again, just like your backward loop, but now you're going to put the yarn round and pop it over. And this is like doing the backward loop method, but also working your first row at the same time. So what you're actually doing is working backward loop and then knitting it on. And you can see it's cast on, it's quite neat. And then on this side, you've just got some little bumps. So you could do a purl row first, and it would be a bit tidier. I'm going to do a knit row first. Quite an easy cast on method to knit into, especially if you manage to keep these stitches loose whilst casting on. So you've got those little bumps because I did a knit row instead of a purl. But it's quite neat. It's good for tight edges. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.